It's Radio Free 501c, the voice of Rogue Tulips Consulting. I'm your host, Cecilia Sepp. Please remember to subscribe. We're on all your favorite podcast services. This week, my guest is Kevin Korenthal, and he is going to be talking with us about raising member dues the right way. That's right, there is a right way to do it, folks, and he's got the key. Welcome to episode 184. Hey, everybody, it's Monday, February 20th, and that means it's time for another episode of Radio Free 501c, the voice of Rogue Tulips Consulting. I'm your host, Cecilia Sepp. I am a certified association executive, and I'm the principal and founder of Rogue Tulips. To our global audience, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be, and thanks for joining us this week. I am so excited. I'm not excited. I am excited, folks, because we have Kevin Korenthal here from the National Association of Park Foundations. He's their executive director, and he's going to talk to us about how to raise member dues the right way. And I was so glad that I connected with Kevin on this topic, because this is something we all have to deal with at least once, if not twice, if not three times. And how do we message it? How do we time it? How do we get that across to our members in a positive way? But before we dive into the content, Kevin, welcome to the show. You're a first-time guest. We're so glad you're here. Would you like to say hello to the audience and tell us a little about yourself?
Well, thank you, Cecilia. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on your podcast today. I am about 19-year trade association and nonprofit professional. Like yourself, I'm also a certified association executive through ASAE, and I do currently manage the National Association of Park Foundations, which I manage under a contract through my association management company, Core Association Services. But for the purposes of today, we're talking about NAPF.
All right, great. And what does NAPF do?
So we represent the community of volunteers and professionals that manage and are the boards of directors of park foundations. So these are 501c3 public-private partnerships where the C3 kind of helps raise money and manage projects for park agencies like your local park district and your local park office in your city. It's a great way to increase bandwidth for park agencies that are under the crunch with, challenges to taxes and needing to go to other things like fire and safety. This is a great way for cities and counties and communities to raise money to be able to create great park spaces for the people.
Oh, and I'm really glad that you're here and able to promote what people who manage parks for all of us do, because I think we tend to take parks for granted, although we really enjoy them. So to all your members, thank you for doing that great work for all of us and making our world a little greener place. So, but
I'm gonna pass that on.
Oh, good. Thank you. Tell them I appreciate it because I love our parks. I use them quite a lot. So, Kevin, we're here today, though, to talk about, a little more business side of things as opposed to strolling through the park and enjoying a nice walk. So we're here to talk about how do you raise member dues the right way? And I'd like to hear, so how would you, let's start that conversation. What is your approach to that?
Yeah, so our members, as I mentioned, are 501c3 organizations and or the government entity like the park district. And so there are limits to the type of spending or the amount of spending that these 501c3s and government agencies can conduct in. So they're always looking for every opportunity to save money. I don't want to raise dues, but as expenses go up and more importantly, we show greater benefit to our members, we have to do that. So I asked my board of directors about raising dues in August of last year. They gave me permission to do so, and they asked me to come back with a plan to do it. So I put together what I'm going to describe to you now. The first thing that we wanted to do was communicate the reason why we were raising dues. That was the number one thing. We want to make sure that right away folks understood that, look, we're not just leaning into the rising costs. We've surveyed you, the membership, and we feel like we're delivering more benefit to you than ever before. This is the first time in our 7-year history that we're raising dues, and we plan to put this extra revenue into creating new membership benefits for you, the member. Oh, and rising costs are a part of this as well, but really made that the tertiary argument because it really is about the fact that if costs were rising and I could not show that we were showing increased value for the member, I probably would have waited another year to raise dues, even though it would have probably cost us heartache, because I really feel like returning benefits is first. So that communication was the first part of the communication. The second part was, whoa, 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 whoa. Don't pay the 2023 membership price. Go ahead and renew now, no matter where you're due in the next year in 2023. We'll renew you at the 2022 price instead of the 2023 price. So right away, I'm showing a value. I'm giving an opportunity for those folks that are especially interested in saving $75, especially a majority of our smaller park foundations took us up on this. Mm-hmm. And we received so much positive feedback in the process of doing this. I've never actually thought that someone would thank me for raising their dues. But that's essentially what we got was you made a compelling argument to us and you offered us something that if we just jumped on this offer, that we could, we'd have the ability to save some money. So we ran that special deal we announced it in November, beginning of November. It started December 1st and went through January 31st. So we just closed this deal out 16 days ago. So during that 2-month period, folks were able to request an invoice. And then as long as that invoice was paid by February 15th, which was yesterday, they got the $375 deal. In fact, we just went in this morning and deleted 3 invoices by folks that obviously weren't serious about renewing early, and they'll just go ahead and renew at the 2023 rate when they come due. But I have folks that were able to, who were due not until October of 2023, took this renewal offer. So they're saving a lot of money. And another benefit for me is I got them locked in for another 365 days. I get to sell them more extra benefits. I get to communicate. I get to have them show up at more events. I don't have to go chase these folks down in October. They're already locked in for another year.
And that makes life a lot easier too. It gives you a little breathing room. And so you only increased dues $75.
Yeah. I mean, we're able to make do with what we're a lean organization, and we're able to do what we do on a relatively slim budget. And frankly, with, like you point out, the value of that was, I'm surprised not everybody renewed at that. But I did get a couple of folks that indicated that, look, our systems for ordering checks, for instance, through the city council or whatever, wouldn't allow us to take you up on the offer.
Of course. Well, and that's where, your processes get in the way of you actually accomplishing things. And that's probably a whole other episode. But, if we have processes and systems in place that don't let us take action, then they're using us instead of us using them as a tool. So that's my take on that. I do know people have procedures. I do know they have budgets, especially when you're working with government and stuff. It's a little bit different thing. But hey, governments, consider that. You could have saved $75 if you let them.
Well, and I'd point out, Cecilia, that this is highly scalable. We have relatively low dues because we're providing information. But if your trade association or nonprofit is providing some larger service where, and say for your dues are $1,000 a year or $3,000 a year, you just scale. It's important to know when it's time. And I guess that's probably one of the pieces of the puzzle is when should I know, when should I decide to go ahead and pay and raise dues on my members? And again, I kind of laid out a little bit about that is if you're getting indications through surveys, and if you're not getting metrics, you're not getting better. If your surveys are improving and you're showing good value for your members, that's the key number one reason why an organization would want to consider raising dues. And if you can do it in a way where if you do it at the end of the year and there is the opportunity to add a member value, which is to renew early and get a savings, all the better. And I didn't receive a single negative comment about raising dues, and I didn't have anyone lapse in that period. So obviously it worked well for us. When I raise dues again in 2 years, it might be a bigger jump, but I guarantee you I'm going to use the same way of doing it.
Well, and your process, I think, is tried and true as well. I mean, as you mentioned, you've been in the association management profession for many years, like I have, and that is usually the approach that I have used at organizations where we were raising dues. And boy, if you waited 7 years, you said you're a 7-year-old organization and that's your first dues increase. That's actually pretty good. And raising them every 2 to 3 years, that tends to be kind of common practice, I think. I don't know about your own experience. What do you think? Have you raised dues before at other organizations?
Oh yeah. So I've been in this position for a year and 3 months. I'm pretty sure I would have raised dues at the beginning of COVID, at least somewhat. But the previous executive director and that board didn't see the need to do that. And to be frank with you, my predecessor did a great job in getting the organization off the ground. But because of my vastly superior experience and my training through ASAE, I really say, and my technological know-how, I mean, I've started our first association management system. This organization was running on a spreadsheet before I came on board. So really, I professionalized the organization. I increased the value of membership by providing more information, as well as more meeting opportunities, more networking opportunities. And that is really what drove the value that led to raising dues. But prior to my coming on board, they probably would have had a harder time justifying it.
There's so many things that you just said I want to jump on. So I'm going to come back to professionalizing the way the organization is managed. I think so many times people think nonprofit means amateur to a certain extent. And I think in this day and age, when there are so many smaller, affordable AMSs out there that you can use, that somebody's still running an organization that started in the 21st century on a spreadsheet, I think that's telling us something about why association management, nonprofit management is important. It's a real profession. It's a real job. It's why we have a certification. It's why you and I both have that certification, because we want to be professionals and we want to bring that forward and we want to help people be successful, because nonprofit doesn't mean not successful. And I think too many people look at it that way. So professionalizing it makes a big difference. And I see where your value proposition jumped incredibly. So what other things? So you've brought on the first AMS and for those of you who don't know what AMS is, if you're outside the profession, it's Association Management System. So that's an integrated system that runs all your data basically. And there's many different kinds. But what were some of the other things you were able to add for your members because you did professionalize the organization?
Well, I also think showing members where the information is on our website was also something that had been lacking, and constantly reminding folks what their member benefits are. These are some of the newer things that we learned as CAEs that I think can be missed if you don't have someone mentoring you in membership, is that you cannot automatically assume that your members know what your benefits are. Even if they keep renewing year after year, it's important to know if your members are utilizing your benefits. And one way you do that is you have an AMS that can track what they do on your website, or what emails they open and what events they go to. Because again, what happens if you don't have metrics? You're not improving. And your AMS is your key. It helped us get to a 91% retention rate last year, and it helped us increase membership by 40%. And that in turn, when we can show these better numbers, and now having, 500, we started with 74 agencies. Now we have 130 agencies. We started off with 74 contacts, meaning one contact per member agency. We now have 500 contacts, and we had 0 prospects. Yeah, I know. There's a spreadsheet I found, but we were never communicating with that list. So we had now 1,000 contacts. So now I can take that information to potential sponsors, and all of a sudden we've increased our year over year, we've increased our sponsorship by almost 100%. So that gives us additional resources that we're now going to toss into creating additional member benefits, including another thing we all know about of us CAEs is an LMS.
Yes.
Learning management. We're going to put together a learning management system and a certification program for folks who work in the Park Foundation space.
And those are just like such great goals. And here I go saying like I'm a Valley girl. No, those are great goals. They're not like great goals. They are great goals. So if you have a great LMS, and for those of you who don't know what that acronym means, that's a learning management system. If you have a really great one, that really elevates the experience. And if you can elevate the experience, you can keep that 91% retention rate. It was really funny, Kevin. I was just talking to somebody at another group I belong to, and I said 90% retention is a ridiculous goal right now for this organization, but it's in a little different place. I think 90% is great. I think we all look at that though, like we kind of tend to see that 85% retention rate. And I think that's also really strong. And what I say to people is, because there's just certain things you can't control, like people change careers, they retire, or they die. And there's nothing you can do about that. You can't retain those people. So what we're looking at then is you're looking at instituting an LMS. So are you looking for one that already exist as part of your current AMS? And what I mean by that is like some of the companies like, Personified, they have an AMS and they have an LMS, and you can buy both. So is that what you're looking at? Are you looking to build your own, or what are your thoughts on that?
So I am with one of Personified's products right now. We are planning on moving out of that company, not for anything that they've done wrong. We've just kind of outgrown the particular product that they have. I do, and one of the drivers of that is I am looking at holistically what our organization is going to need in the future to keep us more quote unquote on autopilot. Less and less of my time and my membership manager's time should be manipulating things within the AMS. Have more of those things automated, and really something that ties in also well with more robust event options, as well as ease of programming those events, and then something that integrates with the LMS that we're creating. So currently, I'm doing customized 90-minute to 2-hour board trainings with our members. So this is what we call a paid member benefit. It's above and beyond, what we offer as part of membership. It's a very lucrative part of our earnings. It's very time consuming. And what I would like to do is for those foundations that don't need a strategic plan element to their training, that I could just go ahead and put something together that's automated for them, where we have maybe 5 or 6 different sessions, that after each session there's a quiz that they finish to get to the next session, and then we're able to offer them some sort of CEU or certificate of completion that tells their agency or their foundation executive director that this person has received this much education on what the basic requirements are for being a board member. And we assume sometimes when we go to ask someone to be a board member that they've had experience being a board member, that they would know what a 990 is if you ask them to show it to you, or if they understand how parliamentary rules play into the legality of your board meetings. I have, like what I've done, I'm taking the 90 minutes to 2 hours to do this. And I'm also scoping on things like modifying the mission, adding value, your value statements. And some of our foundations probably don't need that. They just need something they can roll out to a new board member. And they just buy a seat, bam, the quizzes are taken, the final exam is done. It automatically sends them their certificate of completion, and they're good to go.
So the sport training you're talking about, is it for your board, or is it for your foundation members' boards?
Foundation members board. So every single one of my member agencies are a 501c3 nonprofit board. And these foundation boards oftentimes end up being the first example of someone getting the opportunity to serve on a board. They're a springboard, or they're an opportunity for a retiring community member to get their first taste of being involved on a volunteer board. And frankly, I've just found that boards that are better informed, where each board member knows their responsibilities, the fiduciary responsibilities especially, but also how meetings work and how the financial documents work, these boards perform at a higher level than those that don't.
I agree. I think too many people get on boards. They don't know what they're getting into. They don't know what's expected of them. They don't know their roles and responsibilities. They don't know they're accountable. And I think those of us who've been in the profession for a while, we remember when they revised the 990 form years ago, and everybody was in an uproar because the IRS said boards can no longer say they didn't know.
Yeah.
You can no longer have plausible deniability. Just, I didn't know. Well, if your executive director is embezzling funds, that's not an excuse.
Yes.
Because you have that fiduciary responsibility for the members' assets. So I think that's great. So that's a great add-on. Now, are you able to do that because you raised dues, or was that something you were doing before you raised the dues?
Well, I put that into place June of last year, before we had even decided to raise dues. It's not like the only cost associated with doing it that way is my time.
Right.
Because I'm really just delivering this stuff live, but I'm taking a couple of weeks to prepare information and putting together a slide deck that is it includes their current mission and vision and values and whatever, we talk about insurance, we talk about risk management, and we talk about what's the importance of D&O, when does your organization need liability insurance, all of these things that are part and parcel that a board member should be aware of in case any of this stuff ever touches them. Right. What happens if your executive director embezzles? Am I protected? Do I have to? I mean, I remember having a board member come to me a couple of years ago telling me a story about a previous board he'd been on, where the organization operated without a D&O policy, and everybody on the board had to tap their own home insurance policy to pay for lawyers to be able to back them up. That 501c3 was disbanded very soon after that. But can you imagine, waking up one day and finding out that you have to pay tens of thousands of dollars to represent yourself in something that had nothing to do with you? That's why D&O insurance. And I make that case. Yeah. I tell that story, because I want people to understand that you can't let that thing expire. That is that is the most important thing that you pay for every year.
And I'm so glad you emphasize that to people, because if you don't have it, you are paying out of pocket for that. Yep. And I think that kind of a program that you are putting in place, or that you already did put in place, I should say, that is the sort of thing that people need to know. And I think that really gets it across that what we do is serious. This is not a lark. It's not so, oh yeah, it doesn't matter. I don't need to know anything. It's not true. I think the most successful groups are the ones like yours that make sure everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing and how to do it, and they're not doing it in a vacuum. You're probably also an active volunteer like I am. I'm always trying to do at least one volunteer thing every year that I commit to. And I can tell you, I have been dropped into the middle of situations with no training, no information, no orientation, and people talking about stuff like I know what they're talking about. And that's just not the way to do it. And so I get vocal about it, because I know this is why we have problems. If there's no structure, no education, and no communication about what we're expecting from people, it's like anything in life. It's not going to work. Or if it doesn't, won't work. I'm sorry, go ahead. No,
and you mentioned about taking time as to volunteering. So I run the national organization, but I also volunteer at my local park foundation here in my city. And the first question I asked when I went to the first meeting is, do you folks have this, and this? And they didn't have a D&O policy. And the city, the park and rec director looks at me like he's so sheepishly and puts his head down going, well, it's been on the list. But like, all right, I'd love to join your board. I'll be a volunteer. I'll even take meeting minutes for you, but you got to get your D&O insurance before I'm going to get on board.
That's right. Well, and I'm glad you said that, because, bringing it back to your point earlier about professionalizing the organization, there's no organization that is seriously looking to its future without making sure it's protected.
Yeah.
And that the people involved are protected. We have to protect the organization. And it's one of the things I do a lot of education for people getting ready for the CAE exam. Is one of the things we talk about. If you're the chief staff executive, the most important thing you can do is protect the organization. And that means scanning for liability, make sure you're protecting against, making sure you're covering everything. So kind of going back to our main topic of raising dues the right way, because we kind of got off on something that's obviously near and dear to both our hearts, which is professionalizing what we do. So bringing it back to the right way to do it. So you came up with the idea, you went to the board, you you built the argument. They said, yes, that's a good idea. Let's do it. Come back with a plan. You came back with your plan. They approved the plan. Your members even liked it. They said, wow, you're absolutely right. This is worth more money. So what do you do then? What's your follow-up after people accept, yes, we do need to pay more for dues? Like, what do you do next to make sure you continue to do it the right way?
Well, I mean, for the purposes of that particular program, we did follow up quite a bit by email, and my membership manager followed up with, especially those folks that were going to be due at the first half of the year, because why wouldn't you want to renew right now? Go get that check, and make sure that they were able to take up on the savings. The care and feeding of your members obviously is a whole nother subject that we can, peel like a banana. But there's really there are so many layers, maybe like an onion. An onion's even a better.
I was going to say, because sometimes it makes you cry.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Well, not to mention the fact that there's far more layers involved in that care and feeding. Ensuring that, like, I think, again, survey. If you try to figure out where, especially things like, how often do your members want to be communicated with? How interested are they in taking advantage of your member benefits? Make sure they know about your member benefits. Find out, like, from them, if they know how many of your events I know how many events they've gone to. Do they know how many events they've gone to? I did have it was very rare that anyone lapses on us, but the conversation I had today by email with a board member, he's just a board member. He's not the executive director. He had told me early on that he doesn't want to be included in communications. So we took him out of the system. And then I guess for whatever reason, their executive director parted from the organization, and with their membership due in March, he emails me. He takes the time for no reason to email me and tell me that they not only do they want to cancel their membership, but they want their money back for the whole year.
What?
And yeah, and I'm sitting here going to myself, I'm going, like, first of all, let's have some emotional intelligence, Kevin. Let's not get frustrated about this. But he opted out of any participation in the association that they paid for. They reimbursed that executive director for that money. And he comes to me saying he wants his money back. Meanwhile, my membership manager, he's into the conversation. He's like, look, 3 of the people who are on that membership went to meetings this year. So there's absolutely no argument that we weren't delivering the value. But the reason why I was able to make that argument, and I made it in a very calm and emotionally intelligent way, that I'm sorry, but it's your membership is about due. You opted out of everything. Other people on the membership were taking advantage of the benefits. I'm afraid I can't give you a refund, but your membership will now expire. And if you're ever interested in joining again, we're here. But the only reason I know that is because we were taking metrics. We constantly know that those other board members were using our services. So therefore, we were able to make that cogent case, and therefore I don't have to refund anybody's dues.
And that is excellent that you can go back and do that. I think a lot of times people just say, okay, we'll give you your money back. But why give them the money back when they're probably not going to renew again because they didn't use it? And then it goes round and round in that just circular argument. But other people in the group, now maybe the other people in the group will convince this person to change their mind, because if they were getting something out of the group, out of that membership, they may want to come back.
My membership manager is on the horn with them right now.
Oh, good. I love that. Proactive.
Yeah. Well, and we set up, I'll tell you, if you want to take a real headache out of the renewal process, since we're talking a little bit about AMSs, is with the AMS, you can schedule the frequency and the persons that are hit with those invoices. So I start off 90 days out of their dues being due with just the primary contact, what we call the coordinator. And then right before membership expires, and this is what's going to happen in this case, everybody on that list gets an invoice saying, just to let you know, your membership dues are going to expire. And 3 times now, one time it was because the primary coordinator had left the organization, but 2 times that primary coordinator just, blew it off. As soon as that email went out, 10 days before dues were going to be revoked, all of a sudden we started getting frantic phone calls. So, not only do I not have to remember to send invoices out, but I also have a stopgap, the multiple opportunities to catch those folks. It's a lot harder to do that if you're trying to work from a spreadsheet and a constant contact.
Well, right. It's like you can't do it. I'm sorry,
No.
you just can't. It doesn't matter how
Yes.
many fields you put in that spreadsheet. You cannot do what you just did. So oh gosh, we're getting close to the end of our episode already. It's been a fantastic
Wow.
conversation. I am so glad that you came and spoke with me today about this topic, because there's so much more that goes into it. It's not just about raising the dues. It's like you said, how you do it, doing it the right way, making sure people understand why you're doing it, and that value proposition. So I have one more question for you. What's your view on auto payments?
We don't use them at NAPF. We have an individual, like a retiree membership, where we allow it, but very few people take us up on it.
Okay.
I have no issue against it. The reason why we opted, first off, to not utilize it in our current in NAPF is sometimes it goes against how the public agencies are allowed to pay. So I would love to be able to turn that on. I have the option to turn that on. I would rather not take payments by we could argue about that. Like if I get a payment by check, I get every single dollar of that dues. If they use a credit card, I have to pay a fee. But I think there are many nonprofits out there or trade associations out there that would benefit, and there's nothing stopping them from it. And AMS it's another tool that AMS would give you, is the opportunity to turn on those auto payments.
Well, one of the things I like about auto pay is, one, it can save you a lot of time with invoicing follow-up because people can opt into it. It's not automatic. They can say, yes, I want to do it. I think it does work better though for the individual membership group, where maybe that person is paying for it and getting reimbursed or something. But I do think it's a great tool that is built into a lot of the systems that could be used. And another thing that could be more helpful, and like you said, make more automated systems so that you're focusing on member service as opposed to running the AMS. So this has been such a fantastic conversation, and I think you are spot on with your description of the right way to do a membership dues increase. So thank you for sharing that with us. So at the end of the episode, I like to ask my guest, what is the one thought you would like the audience to take away today? And if they wanted to talk to you more about this topic, how could they get in touch?
Yes. So number one thing I think to take away from the membership, specifically the dues rating process that I use, it has to be done. You have to think through this process. You have to aim it for the end of the year, because if you don't, you're going to take a bunch of your 20, like for instance, I didn't want to take all my 2023 money and put it in 2022. I wanted to spread that evenly between the December of 2022 and January of 2023. And that's I had a great end of year in 2022 and I got fantastic beginning of 2023. That's the number one key thing you need to keep in mind. If you're going to use this type of system, you don't want to rob one year for the next. So make sure you keep that in mind. And then as far as to get a hold of me, that's the-NAPF.org. My contact information is all over that website. Go there, take a look, see what we do. If you want to reach out to me, that's a great way to do it. The-NAPF.org. Happy to hear from any of your listeners, Cecilia.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Kevin. And I'm sure you'll hear from some people to get to talk with you about this subject. You presented it so clearly, and I think this is the right way to do it. So thank you for joining us, and we hope to have you back later this year.
Thank you, Cecilia. I appreciate it. And thank you to your audience.
So everybody, that means it's time to go rogue for now. We'll be back next week with another exciting episode of Radio Free 501c. But in the meantime, if you'd like to learn more about Rogue Tulips Consulting and how we can help your organization bloom outside the box, check us out online at roguetulips.com. If you are a current CAE, a CAE candidate, or a nonprofit professional who just would like to get some more education, check out our education program, the 501c League. It has its own website, the 501cleague.net. We have study groups, courses, webinars, and some other services you may want to check out. And you can download our 2023 course catalog there. So on behalf of Kevin and myself, thanks for joining us, and we'll be back next time with another episode.